Emma, hello. Welcome. Welcome to the Where the Climate Things Are podcast. I am so excited to be reconnected with you because, fun fact, we went to high school together and maybe middle school. I don't know what the
Yeah,
overlap was.
yeah. Shout out to Wainfleet.
Wayne
And
Fleet.
Addie, thank you so much for having me on. You've had some wonderful guests, and I'm honored to be here and be a part of it.
Well, you've been on my, as I mentioned, on my guest list, my dream guest list for a while. I've so loved seeing you pop up in this like outdoor environmental space that we both occupy and being like, I know her. This is so great. So this is really, really fun. And obviously I want basically to talk about Maine the whole time, but I'll refrain from only talking about Maine. But I was just wanting to start with having you introduce yourself to the audience in whatever way you want to take that.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, I have had this uh, career at the intersection of creativity and environmentalism and education are probably sort of these three like winding paths. And I am currently working as a teacher and an environmental artist here on Mount Desert Island in Maine. So lucky to have returned to our home state after many years out west, and then more recently in northern New Hampshire. And I create mostly textile work, mostly landscape based slow art that aims to pay tribute to the places it depicts. And that looks a lot of different ways, a lot of embroidery, some illustration, a lot of mixed media canvases. And then I also teach both adults and first through eighth graders. I teach adult classes at a variety of venues and host workshops in landscape art. And then I teach at a little school on the island called the Community School for Place-Based Education.
Oh,
And so that's
yes.
what I'm up to in a nutshell.
Kind of a dream. I mean, look
Honestly,
at all
yeah.
these intersecting pieces of your life coming together, which we'll get into, but um so cool. So cool. I'm really excited to ask you this question because I ask this question to everyone on the that comes on the podcast, but I always feel like it's fun to like get a little bit more of an interdisciplinary view of these awakenings, if you will. But the question is, curious what your aha moment on climate or environment was. And it sounds like you've been in the environmental education space and guiding and whatnot for a while. So I'm really intrigued to hear kind of what that was for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could have said in my intro as this, you're focused on the intersections of outdoor recreation with all of this as well. And so I am a rock climber and a trail runner or slow trail romper and a skier. And it's funny, I used to introduce myself first with those things. And in the past
Hmm.
couple of years, I have sort of been defining myself a little bit more by the art and storytelling side of things and a little bit less by the
Hmm.
uh, semi professional outdoorist side of things, but all very much a part of my background as well. And my aha moment, um, well, I think that we were so lucky to be at Wainfleet, this great little independent school in Portland, Maine. And I was there from 6th through 12th grade. And I had some sort of classes and clubs and experiences that were environmentally focused. I
Hmm.
think about volunteering for some lunch group where we put a recycling bin in the atrium with different signage or something, and it was a pivotal moment of like I can affect change. Like, look at this recycling sign, whatever. I think that our school did a good job of facilitating those things. And I think that around that, high school era, I did Chewonki
Oh,
School's Maine Coast semester, a fall where, as a junior in high school, you get to go and really focus on sustainable living. And you take your regular high school classes, but everything is through a sustainability lens. There's a salt marsh farm at Chewonki, and so you get up early and you milk the cows, and you the sort of aha moment that's in there for me is I was in this cabin. You get placed in a cabin with 7 or 8 other teens, and our cabin was this new experiment where we're off grid, but we had an electrical system, and to power that electrical system, we had a stationary bike hooked up
no
to a
way.
generator in the corner of our cabin. And so it was
Oh
myself
gosh.
and like 7 other 16-year-old girls
Yeah.
in bunk beds. And it was like, if you want to charge your laptop to do your homework, if you want to be able to turn on your lights at night, you can ride the bike. And the bike had this bar. So you're like biking and you're turning the back wheel against the bar. And that
Mhm.
friction, that like kinetic energy gets stored in a generator in the corner of the cabin. And it was as hilarious as and just like fascinating of an experience as you might imagine, because in addition to being an aha moment about climate, it was an aha moment about community and collaboration, and this love of like communal living has also been sort of a through line for me, and where I just have often ended up in silly communal living situations, and this was a first there as well. And so I think about all of these wheels and schedules that we made and all of the things that we tried and failed at because we were just testing everything. It was like if you biked at some times, the closer you biked to when you had to have the lights
Mm.
on, like the battery would depreciate. So if you biked in the
Mm.
morning and then you want to turn on your lights at night, it wouldn't be able to power the lights for as long as if you bike close to when
Huh.
you want the lights. But also, who wants to bike after a long day of like sports and high school? And so
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
super silly. And it was like you were always biking in a high gear because you were turning the back tire against this bar. And so it was a crash course in problem solving. It was an aha moment in the obvious cheesy things. I think I like wrote my college admissions essay about this bike experience.
Whoa.
And in all of the obvious things of coming together for a shared goal of lights. And also it was an aha moment in like working past a lot of stumbles and failures and plenty of nights where we were like, we don't actually need lights. We're just gonna live like little headlamp people, and our
We're just really tired.
this would always, yeah, I mean, and eventually it was really challenging, and we sort of teamed up with adults at Chewonki to put solar panels on the roof. And that was like in the long-term plan. It was like bike plus solar panels, off-grid cabin. And so there was solar involved at some point in the winter as well. And I think I'm sort of answering a couple of questions, and like one
Yeah.
is, when were you first aware of the climate crisis?
Mhm.
And then one is also like, when did you start doing something about it?
Yeah.
And for me, I don't remember the moment when I became aware. I mean, I think that around the time I went to Chewonki and in middle school and high school, like Bill McKibben, 350.org, I remember
From
um,
high school, you remember that.
learning
Good for
about
you.
that.
Yeah,
And
that's
like,
like core
yeah, I
stuff.
mean, I think Chewonki and Wainfleet really did give me a lot of inroads to awareness, but I also think there's something sort of interesting as we think about what catalyzes climate action with that.
Hmm.
I don't remember the times when I just heard about things that didn't feel like I could control them. I remember the times when, like, I had some agency and felt like part of a
Yeah.
solution. Those were sort of my early memories and aha moments are when I felt like I not only was hearing about the climate crisis, but I could be involved in creating something
Yeah,
to make it better
totally.
in some small, silly, like marker sign on a recycling bin way.
No, I mean, I love that. And you gosh, you saying the word atrium has like sent me into a like whole for those that don't know, this was our like how would you I mean, just like the center of our high school building, maybe. Kind of like a communal area.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was like the atrium was like it was like gung like it like hit me, you know. I was like, "Whoa, that's such a great call." Well, that and MCS. So I had good friends, a lot of good friends from my year do MCS as well.
Mhm.
And they came back completely changed. And if I'm being honest, and if those folks are listening, the like Christy, David, Matthews of the world who are possibly listening to this, I was so like all the people that didn't do MCS, we were all like, oh, all they talk about is MCS. But like deep down, we were so like at least I was like jealous because I like felt them change, right? I like saw them come back from this experience and I don't know if they had the off-grid I don't know if they had the off-grid cabin. At least I hadn't heard of that yet, but like hearing it from you is so interesting that there was like that experiment going on. But just the like, as you said, like milking the cows, like working on the farm component, and then you had classes and it was like hands-on with ocean coastal work and like it just felt very transformative for them. And so to hear you talk about it too, I was like, oh, yes, I remember that. And I remember being, if I'm being really honest, I think all of us that didn't go were like a little bit like, oh, that sounds so cool. But we would never say that at age 16. You know what I mean? Like, well, hopefully I did. But I think in deep down, I was like, oh man, they have all these like fun, like inside jokes, you know, that like I don't get.
Yeah, it was like a unique insular experience for sure. And
Yeah.
it's been really interesting as I've gone on and worked in other environmental ed organizations, how Chewonki and my Chewonki cohort set the roots for like a lot of what I know about
Huh.
community and shared
That's so
living.
cool. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So you mentioned, okay, I love that you kind of had this moment just now where you were like, I used to introduce myself more in the like outdoorsy way, or like more in the sort of like outdoor athlete. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, of course, but I did want to ask you about, and you, as you said, you did answer a few questions because I was like very curious how, like, of course, how Maine shaped you and your environmentalism, which it obviously is very, very clear how that experience was quite formative. But I am really curious, like, I think you went out to Colorado for college, it sounds like, and you've done guiding. I know you're a climber, you're a trail runner. And I mean, I'm the same way where I'm like, I go, like, I move over trails. If I like walk, I walk. If I run, I run. Like, it's trail romping, whatever you want to say. I think, yeah, I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about that because I think as this podcast is kind of at the intersection of like outdoor recreation broadly framed, like I do have people come on here being like, oh, I'm not enough of like an outdoor recreator, or I like to just forage mushrooms. And I'm like, hell yeah, like that's outdoors, you know, that's so cool. But I was just curious, kind of before we get into more of like your art journey and your climate and environmental work, what was, yeah, like what has that been like for you, kind of exploring, discovering these new sports, these new athletic outdoor pursuits, and maybe getting into why, if you want to, why you've like started to shift into introducing yourself a different way. I just think that's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like the in-depth answer that I'll get into, and there's the low-hanging fruit answer, which
Yeah.
is that I have pursued climbing at some level for a really long time, and I tore my labrum in my shoulder a little over a year ago, and so that coincided with a move and some other things and insurance snafus and like, am I getting
Yeah.
surgery? And so I've just so injury is one
Yeah.
easy way to describe
Yeah.
not identifying as a climber first anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, background in being an outdoor athlete a little bit. So starting in high school or even middle school, I discovered Maine Rock Gym in Portland,
Yeah.
which doesn't exist anymore. Its holds and picnic tables went to like Salt Pump or whatever is there now, but
Yeah.
it was a great little oasis for me as an after school program and as a community. And so when I went out to Colorado College, I knew that I wanted to learn everything I could about climbing outdoors. And so I really jumped into it and haven't worked full time in guiding, but I did gain some initial AMGA certifications, did my single pitch instructor course so that I could dabble in that world. And um, yeah, climbing has given me so much access. Like, it's been a vehicle to go on some of the most incredible trips and meet wonderful people. And I will always love the movement of climbing. And it was my career for a while in that I, after Colorado College, did a couple education internships, including one that was like climbing adjacent up in the Tetons, and then came back to Golden, Colorado to work for the American Alpine Club. And so I did marketing for the American Alpine Club for like 4 years. So I was deep in the scene and I was like, climbing is my hobby. And also, I'm going to work
And my
and
work.
talking to climbers and I am talking about climbing. And we are telling the same story of how everyone approached challenging climb and climbed it and it changed them on repeat. And it was like, um, it was a really and I got some really incredible opportunities and met some incredible people through that chapter. By the time that the pandemic hit and I was furloughed from the American Alpine Club with like a quarter of our staff, I was
Wow.
feeling pretty burnt out on. I mean, I got a really good look at both the abilities and advantages of nonprofit communication in the climate and outdoor rec space. You know, American Alpine Club is more outdoor rec than climate. And also the limitations of what you can do working at a nonprofit. And um, I think I was a little bit burnt out on my hobby being my job, which I'm sort of just in another iteration of that. Like, I'm not feeling burnt out now, but I do tend to.
Yeah.
I mean, I get to work in ways that I feel passionate about, which I feel really lucky for.
So great.
And the American Alpine Club definitely opened doors for me. I did some things like that have very much come full circle, like Climb the Hill was a advocacy effort that the AAC did with Protect Our Winters and
Hmm.
Access Fund, where we would go to DC and lobby for legislation that impacted climbers and outdoor recreationists. And as someone who doesn't have much of a policy background or policy education besides that, I learned so much through a couple of those efforts. And I loved the parts of that work where I got to make people's stories tangible by putting together like our guidebook to membership publication and things that would be printed and have a life beyond the digital marketing side of things. But yeah, I was burnt out on looking at my computer. I was burnt out on it feeling one dimensional talking to climbers about climbing.
Yeah.
And people have amazing climbing stories. Like, I will always love some aspects of climbing media. And also, I was ready to pivot a little bit back into. I had a brief and wonderful stint as marketing director for No Man's Land Film Festival that my friend Kathy
Cool.
runs.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Also during pandemic times, I was on this slow van trip from west to moving home here to Maine, and that let me tell stories through a wider lens, tell stories that were inclusive and groundbreaking and felt a little bit more like the stories that I wanted to tell, that I could tell in some ways. I mean, it's a whole can of worms, right? Like, what as a marketer who can't control everything that an organization is funding and doing, it's like all these questions of what's performative and what my role can be. And so I felt like I could be more effective and pass the mic and amplify different cool stories working at No Man's Land.
So cool.
For my friend
Yeah.
Kathy, who's wonderful, who runs it. If folks aren't familiar, No Man's Land Film Fest is a film fest that highlights underrepresented voices in adventure film, and it's wonderful and tours the country each March-ish. Well, there's like a event in March, and then it tours the country. And
So cool.
so this is a long-winded way of saying that my work in the outdoor industry also started feeling really digital. Like, of course, I was working in mostly digital marketing. I got to do some print publication stuff at the AAC and some amazing trips and in-person work, but also a lot of the storytelling was really, I was running a whole social media website and that sort of stuff. And by the time that we landed back on the East Coast, I was really craving having a tangible in-person impact and conversations and bringing things a little less online and a little more into the real world. And so I pivoted back to teaching. I had studied creative writing and education at Colorado College, and so leaned back into the teaching world, which so many of these decisions have been also dictated by moving a lot in different life reasons and searching for other, stability and wanting to be interacting with the next generation instead of moderating
cool.
Instagram comments talking about climate. It's like,
Yeah.
shout out to anyone who's in marketing.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, let's just
accounts. That was challenging.
Yeah. It's funny how social media, I feel like, comes easier to some people and not to, like myself. I'm like, oh, I have to post.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I will always love climbing and have roots in climbing. And I'm working my way back from my injury, and we'll see what
so
my
tough.
path back ends up being.
Yeah.
And my passion for climbing is really in alpine climbing, and I live on Mount Desert Island in Maine, and so we have actually great climbing.
You do.
Here, the fact that we're small in Maine. But
there's amazing climbing. Yeah.
So I'm lucky that I still get to get out fairly frequently and can do easy climbs these days. And it's all good.
It's so great, and I also really appreciate you sharing about the injury, because I think, I've been, my running friends know I've been injured a lot, and it's like in the past few years, it feels, since the pandemic, honestly, and it feels like I like come back slowly, like really carefully, and then I'll like overcompensate on something and something else will get, and it's like just kind of been a few interesting years of that. But I'm glad you still get to get out because I'm in the same boat. Even if I'm hiking these days, I'm like, hey, it's something. Like I'm out here,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
beautiful. So
absolutely. And
yeah, but it's tough. So you went home to Maine, and I think I read or watched something that sort of highlighted the fact that you got home at one point and you like found all these friendship bracelet threads. And I like had to bring this up because my sister and I also were big friendship bracelet household of like it's so funny because in the film I watched that someone did on you, which was really beautiful, really well done. There was like a close up shot of all the friendship bracelet threads, and like it's such a visceral, like similar to the word atrium, like it's such a visceral, like I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't like seen that thread in so long, and I can like it's like such a specific thing that if no one knows what I'm talking about, it's kind of hard to explain. But there's just beautiful embroidery thread that like or can also be used for embroidery, but a lot of like I feel like maybe it was more common like summer camp stuff, but I don't know, we just did it at home. But
it's like
anyways,
very
like it sounds
90s. Yeah.
yeah.
Also, my fourth, fifth graders who I teach on the island are as obsessed with it as our
Okay,
generation.
because so maybe this is like an intergeneration. I love that to hear that. But it's so you went home and you found this thread and you were like, "Whoa, we have all these beautiful colors." Like how did it come to be that because you now like jumping forward, you've really made such a name and space for yourself as this incredible like slow art creator and artist and embroiderer. I don't know if that's a word that you
Yeah,
use, but
totally.
you create beautiful landscape embroidery, which I want to ask you more about. But how did that start? Like, what was the first impetus? How did the like threads kind of tip you into that direction? Tell me the like origin story of your art now.
Yes, I mean, it goes way back to that I've always kept a journal full of doodles, and mostly it's pictures of landscapes. And my mom is a sewer, and so I grew up with a lot of fabric around, but I didn't have the sort of linear brain for quilting. Like,
Mm,
I've always loved more freeform art forms, and so yes, my sister and I were very into friendship bracelets, like up
same.
until middle
Oh my
school
gosh.
or later, who
I kind
knows,
of want to
never
make one
ending
now.
love for
Yeah.
friendship bracelets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, came home, and I think it was one of those things, you come home from out west for a holiday, and my mom's like, you need to do something with this, like we have so
Yeah.
much thread from your youth in the basement. um
Sounds familiar.
and so it was just sort of out, and I just drew a mountain with thread, and that friendship bracelet making thread is still my primary medium. Like that
Okay.
DMC brand
Yeah.
thread is my favorite supply.
The colors are like the colors they make. I don't
Yeah,
know if well, you're like an expert on this. I feel though that the colors were always so cool and varied, and there were different hues. Like it wasn't the like primary colors only. Like they really
yeah,
have a good variety. I remember being like, ooh, like dusty pink, or like mustard green. Like it was very sort
yeah.
of it's
Very
cool.
versatile, and it's been a good balance. When you're painting or something, you have an unlimited palette based on the colors you can blend, and I actually like working with that bit of constraint that they make so
Hmm.
many colors, but also you don't have like truly infinite color choices,
Right.
and so you're a little
Right.
bit making do with what you have. And
Hmm.
so I think from the beginning with that, uh the roots of my art are in this, like, it's a found material, a very synthetic found material, but a like, what can we do with what we have sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I started stitching. I stitched a mountain on a scrap of fabric, and then I stitched a scene on the back of a jacket, and it came pretty naturally to me, I think, because I was lucky to grow up around fabrics and scrappy quilting and also doodling. And yeah, I've always been a nature journaler. I've always felt so lucky to see the places that I see, and I've just wanted to like capture that and keep some record of it. And then this art business has become sort of a path for me to see new places and get back to the places I'm stitching in various ways when I can. And also, I've realized that other people want to learn this art form, and embroidery has such a rich history in so many cultures. Like, we've always moved thread through fabric.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, I could go on and on about how
Yeah.
great teaching it has been, and people are craving something tangible to do with their hands, something that's not digital, something that is 3D and real and creative. And so it's been a whole community for me. And yeah.
That's so cool. I that is actually the exact reason, a little bit different, but we've started to do events with where the climate things are called climate strides. Is because like I've realized people were like, especially after the pandemic,
Mhm.
craving kind of in-person, tangible community creation, not just sort of this online like facade that we all interact through. And it's been really powerful to see like people showing up at events time and again, and I'm like, whoa, all these people are here. Like, we're such a small little thing, we're not like, we're kind of still making our way. So I think for you, like, it makes so much sense that there's, even with what you're doing, like, there's the tangible, and people want to learn. There's like that tangible thing that they can create, do make something in the world that is not like, it doesn't live online and doesn't hurt your eyes or whatever, like looking at a screen. There's sort of that like incredible tangible piece. And what I was gonna ask you was, your embroidery is stunning and so accurate. Do you look at a photo when you embroider? Like, how do you do it? Like, do you just sort of like envision it in your mind? You're like, oh, I remember what Rainier looks like or whatever, and then like put it on a jacket? Or are you looking at something when you stitch?
Doing it, what artists say, in plain air, like outside looking at the mountain itself,
Yeah.
just freehand, is like the most fun way. But most often, I'm looking at a reference photo, or if I'm doing a plant or something, I am looking at a field guide. And so I usually have a photo I've taken or a field guide photo to go off of. But then I just start stitching right onto the fabric. I don't, a lot of people think of embroidery and they think of these sort of fussy patterns that you transfer
Yeah.
the fabric somehow, and you have to like know all of these different stitches. And I find it much more fun to just sort of intuitively stitch what you see.
Cool.
And I'm not a super patient person in most areas of my life. I have this incredibly slow art form, but I think that what keeps me able to focus on it for hours and hours is that I don't know how it will turn out. I don't
Hmm.
have an end image of the embroidery in mind, even if I'm looking at a photo. And so I think that there's some sort of suspense and mystery to it for me when
Yeah.
I'm stitching. And I think that if I was following a pattern and I did know exactly how it would turn out, then I might lose interest. Like, I like that
Interesting.
each thing kind of takes on a life of its own, because I'll put in one sort of element of a landscape. Like, I'll put in the horizon line, and then I'm sort of working off of that to be like, well, then this is here and this is here, and um the darkest shadows are here and the lights are here, and it just
Huh.
sort of builds on itself. I was a big Lego child in addition to a big friendship bracelet
Hell yeah.
child. I
Hell
feel
yes.
like this like building up of layers, it feels like it's rooted in the same
Yeah.
creative process
And
for me.
different colors. Yeah. Totally. I feel like I was thinking of embroidery for me. Like, I know we did like hook rugs like in like
Mm-hmm.
elementary school. I remember doing like hooking rugs, and then But then I feel like I've done something sort of similar to like the only thing I'm thinking in my head like is like the paint by numbers situation or
Yeah.
whatever, where you're like, I think I've done kind of that with embroidery where it's like this color goes here and this color goes here. And that's why I was so curious how you formulated these landscapes, because it's so cool that you can like look at something. I don't know, like I don't have the drawing or the art, like the art. I I love playing music and stuff, so like I know that's everyone's like that's art, but I like don't have the drawing mind or the like mapping of a drawing or mapping of a scene and being able to like recreate it on a page or a in an embroidery. Certainly not in embroidery, and I'm so like I just am so in awe of you and folks that can kind of recreate a landscape in such a beautiful and creative way. And something that I know started to happen for you, and we can talk through the journey here, but something that I saw, you know, of course, recently was the work you did with like the glacier flags in Washington, which we were just talking about. Like, I know you've been out here a bunch. But in general too, like how did your art start to become, because it's very much to me like what I see is like environmental advocacy and climate, like climate or not, but I mean glacial melt is very real and related to climate. And so I started to kind of dig deeper and realize like so much of what you're doing, and I'm curious if you like think of it this way or how you think of it, but you know, so much of your work also helps to be this like sort of advocacy or beacon of environmental protection and a beautiful jacket or like and a beautiful scene on a piece of clothing. And so like I was just curious how that started to form for you, or if it was kind of like you got contacted by this Cascades project and you were like, cool, I'm in. But like, yeah, how is the kind of journey from like into climate art, I guess, if you will, or environmental advocacy art happen for you?
Yeah. I mean the North Cascade Climate Project pieces specifically were really full circle in a fun way, because thinking back to my time at the American Alpine Club, I had hired this wonderful artist, Jill Pelto, to do some of our marketing materials, or it wasn't even really marketing, but we made this guidebook to membership. And we asked Jill to do the art about glacial recession for some tear out postcards that you could send to your lawmaker asking them to take action on climate. And so that was part of this publication that we made. And so I had not met Jill in person ever, but had stayed in the loop just online about her work and seen her doing this incredible work. With her dad, who's the lead scientist for North Cascade Glacier Climate Project. He has been returning to the same glaciers
Wow.
year after year for 41, 42 years now. So it's something like, I think it's the longest steadily running glacier monitoring program.
Wow.
Maybe around, maybe in North America. I should fact check myself, but it's like a legendary program, and it's a small team. And Jill, as the art director for the program, has brought in other artists to come along on this expedition. Um, and so the project for me was getting to be artist in residence, visiting 6 different melting glaciers, 5, not counting one that last year lost 2 years ago, lost its designation as an active glacier, and it has been demoted to a snowfield. That's the Iceworm Glacier. And so I got to come along on this journey, which is also really an athletic feat, this journey that they pull off every summer. And I joined for, I think, 10 days out of more of like a 3 or 4 week field season for these scientists who go monitor and probe, and they liken it to like a health checkup, like a doctor visit for each glacier to see how they're doing. And the data is stark. They're I think the North Cascades have lost close to half of their glacier volume, Um, and since Maury started the project in when he was, that was 40 years ago. And I think that half of that loss has occurred since 2013. So it's like he is really providing the numbers to show that accelerated melting is happening. And then my role is to tell that story through art. And backing up to how I landed there, I had visited enough glaciers through ski mountaineering and climbing trips that I was fascinated by them, and I had depicted glaciers in my art and depicted glacial recession um, through mixed media textile projects in the past. And so when Jill and I started chatting, it was originally starting to chat about creating a art show, about me participating in an art show she was curating, which happened in Seattle last April, called Shaped by Ice. And we had 8 or 9 different artists who depict the effects of climate change on glaciers through different media and mediums and angles. And so I happened, the timing aligned. It was a bit last minute for me to hop on that expedition last summer. And I created in the field there a series of 5 flags, each depicting 1 or 2 of the glaciers and some of the data, trying to show it in a way that would draw people in, that would catch them in a way that a written article full of data might not catch them, would resonate differently, would sort of leave some room for interpretation in a way that the written word alone might not different interpretation of the data, but like for people to be able to sort of find their own story in it. Like people relate to art differently than they relate to a scientific article. And so yeah, the experience was incredible. We would, it was a full on backpacking trip, and then by headlamp in the tent, I would be finishing the
No way.
stickers that I started on the glaciers each day. And so, yeah, by the end of the trip, I had this string of, we called them impact flags, and they were somewhere between like the concept of a prayer flag, a hopeful flag, and also a white flag of surrender for all the things that we can't change, all the melting that has already occurred, but also hopefully a art piece that catalyzes action. And I can go into that more, but the art show that we then put on was climate action in itself. It was really cool to take our remote glacier art and plop it into this gallery in the middle of downtown Seattle. And we had like
So
a
cool.
opening night on an art walk night. And so people were coming in who didn't know anything about glaciers or the exhibit. And I think I'm conscientious of living in environmentally aware communities and being in my little echo chamber a lot of the time. And so I really value any times that my art can get out of the echo chamber and not just be seen by people who already care. And so that was really fun. We had people wandering in off the street being like, "Is this about nature?" And we were like, "Yes, let us
Yes.
tell you."
Thanks for
It is.
asking.
And specifically, like,
That's so cool.
yeah. And so it was a great example also of collaboration, of the ways that science and art can intersect. Because
Yeah.
I think that we need more science art overlap. And Jill and Maury are doing amazing work. They're out on their 42nd or 43rd field there, whatever this summer is field season
Right
right
now.
now. So
Oh,
everyone
wow.
eye out for the art that comes out of that, the data that comes out of that. It's an
Yeah.
incredible ongoing effort.
Wow. Yeah, you're not kidding. That's like it's also an amazing feat summer after summer, and to bring more folks in like yourself to be able to experience it. And I love what you said. I was going to ask you about this cuz and you brought it up, the idea of like both surrender, like sort of a white flag of like there is loss, this has happened, we can't get this back, and like telling the facts of that, as hard as it is to hear, and the like hopeful prayer flag of kind of like, and here's what we can save. And it's sort of that idea of I don't know, I feel like I geek out on this a lot, but just the idea that like when we talk about climate adaptation, there's sort of this, or I guess I should start with mitigation. There's sort of this like, we still got this, like we can mitigate, we can draw down carbon. We can, definitely. And we have to like look at what is already happening and the impacts that we have to like brace ourselves for. And I think that gets a lot less attention from like funders and policymakers, because you're kind of, it's almost this like admitting defeat concept when you talk about
Mhm.
adaptation, I've always thought. And I've like, I'm always such a like, try to be such a like adaptation like champion or whatever, because I'm always kind of like, we cannot forget about like how we need to secure our own communities in the face of like admitting to the loss, you know, of like what's been lost. So I just really appreciated when I read about that on your blog, like the both sides of what you were doing, of like it's not just talking about like, obviously it's funny, my whole like thesis here or theory of change on this like project is just to be positive and hopeful and solutions oriented, and I'm like, in a little bit I'm going to ask you about a climate solution you like that kind of thing. It's always solutions oriented, but I have to say I also, it's very important to be real about like
Mhm.
what's already happened and the impacts that we're already seeing, because if we ignore that, then I think the conversation becomes almost too positive or too like, oh, don't worry, like we don't need to worry yet. And it's like, oh, we do.
Yeah, it's important. Absolutely. It's important to recognize what's been lost,
Yeah.
and to have those moments of climate grief. And
Yeah.
it's been interesting as we have pitched this work, this body of climate art, um, and data. It's like the media wants the solutions
Mm,
because the narrative is a little bit like people know the glaciers are melting, like
right.
what's the angle, and
Yeah.
it we
Huh.
and so it's really interesting to get creative thinking about what the action items are, and also to sort of acknowledge that there isn't a perfect action item, and it's really important that just the story of this loss is told in itself. And but thinking about the action items a bit. I mean, of course, it's easy to think like, well, that's great. You went out there and connected with the glacier and felt it melting and depicted that, but not every the action item is not go sit on a melting glacier and paint it. We aren't all going to do that. The action item is that hopefully our art sparks conversation and motivates folks who wouldn't otherwise be motivated to advocate for policy change, and also to find their own role in mitigating the climate crisis. So I think a lot about, I'm sure you've seen that social change ecosystem model, I think it
Hmm.
is. It's I think it's Deepa Iyer. I might be saying her name wrong. Who has that diagram of all the little bubbles that interweave, where it's like we need the weavers, we need the healers, we need the
Yes.
disruptors. And so my role, at least in this project, has been to be an art storyteller, but the ask isn't like we don't all need to be art storytellers. We need everyone to find whatever their role is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And to see themselves in like taking action or see an opening for that,
Yeah,
because it's right, it's
absolutely.
like we're not all going to be, well, I certainly would not be able to replicate the beautiful art that you do, but like seeing the way that artists are involved in climate, like there's also been, I've seen like, I think it was Patagonia and like Yo-Yo Ma like doing music
Yes,
on a glacier, and I
yes.
was like,
I
that's
love
so
that.
cool, you know?
I
And you're
love
like,
that so
that's
much.
such a unique take on climate action in a completely different way, right?
Mhm.
Than I would have thought. So I think it's, I love that we all need to find our ways in,
Yeah,
and there's ways like, I don't know, even I feel like I sort of say this a lot, but I feel like there's also, does not need to mean that you like quit your job and like move to another place. Like it can be that you like are just taking action in your daily life, and it's figuring out what that is. But
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I'll say, in my role as a school teacher and getting to spend a lot of time with young people, it's been really encouraging how naturally that comes to them.
Mm,
And I feel like it's worth giving a shout out to the next generation because
yeah.
there's a lot of creativity, and I think it's all of our natural instinct to try to like cobble together the various tools and roles and work together and find these solutions. And it's been cool to see that. I sort of skipped over the chapter of our moving and my career trajectory, where for the past 3 years before this past year, my husband was teaching at a little school in northern New Hampshire. And so we had faculty housing and we're like dorm parents for a
Oh,
bunch
I
of
love that.
teenagers. So I lived in a teen boys dorm for 3 of the past 4
Wow.
years. And so
That
I
is
do
an
feel like
experience.
as we sort of talk about action items and like just all of these different approaches and the balance between realism and pragmatism and imagination in this like climate space, that very silly, very wonderful, very goofy living situation, um, it gave me a lot of motivation. And I don't want to be one of those teachers that's just like, the kids will solve it, the kids give us hope, like, but also,
Sure, yeah. There are a lot of people that say
yeah,
that. Yeah.
for them, we we gotta keep all doing our part in this.
Yeah,
And it's been motivating to
totally.
live with and then witness the ingenuity of teenagers in my fourth, fifth grade class and
So real.
students who I teach.
No, I love that balance between you being like, I don't want to, yeah, because I do think there's a narrative where people are like, oh, we'll just let, like, it's the next generation. They're so inspiring, which they are.
Yeah,
I'm like constantly so blown away by the like passion and motivation, dedication, all the words, so many different words to describe what they're doing. And it's also like, but wait. It's also on us still. Like, we need to
yeah,
still be doing stuff. So I think it's like, no, you described a really cool balance. And it's so cool that you've been like up close and personal with this generation in a way that's like both climate related and also just in general, you know, living with them and like
yes,
teaching life, like different, I mean, living in like being a dorm parent is like a whole other level of teaching, I feel. So I'm
yeah,
sure you have like endless stories about that, but yeah, that's super cool. I think it's like something that, I mean, yeah, I'm going to sound very cliche and kind of like what you were just referencing, but when I've worked with, I've gotten the chance a couple times to work with youth climate activists, and it is like, it's next level. And I
yeah,
feel so hopeful. And yet I know it's not like that. I'm not just going to pass it off to them to do, but I'm often just like, whoa, you've accomplished in like a day what I work weeks to do. Like, it's just this energy level. I don't know. It's so cool. And it's not just, youthful energy. It's also like commitment and like true feeling of the topic, I think, in a way that
Mhm.
like I don't know, hearing you talk about our high school experience, like, and that's why I was like, wow, like, you know, 350.org you knew about in high school. Like these are things that it took me like years to I feel like I always say I'm sort of like a late bloomer or like a late comer to the like environmental movement because I was like sure focused on like social impact and social entrepreneurship and stuff, but it wasn't as like environmental focused till more recently. And I just think it's so cool that like even you picked up what you did from like us going to the same place for high school. And like it was a very environmentally focused school. When I look back on it and even hear about you talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, we had like so much outdoor experience, right? Like all these ways that we were like outside, getting outside. And I still feel like it took me a while. Like my passion for outdoors was later. My passion for environmentalism was later. And I think like I don't know. I love like hanging out with kids, like teenagers and like activists or whatever, like even not activists specifically, but just kids because they're like, yeah, we have to do that. Like we have to take action. Duh, you know?
Mhm.
There's sort of no
Mhm.
other choice, which
Yeah,
I love.
yeah. It would be really cool to see more leaders in the outdoor space working with teens
Yeah,
and kids. Because, yeah, there's a lot of exciting up and coming young leaders.
totally. That's a good little spark of an idea. We should hold on to that for together for like
Yeah.
some future collaboration.
I know a lot of
Just
cool kids in my in
yeah,
my
you
teaching work,
do.
and so I
Yeah.
just always want to hype them up too, and yeah, but
It's
not put the
so
climate crisis on them, which is
no, right. It's a
a
tough
balance.
balance. It's
Yeah.
a good balance that you've called out for sure. Okay, back to climate. This is my last question for you because I'm like I know already that I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour. What okay, so I ask everybody this to wrap these conversations and the question is what is your favorite climate solution that's not your own? And in this case, you have so many different ways that you interact with the world. You're a teacher, you're an artist. So, if you can, like sort of thinking outside of that box, those boxes a little bit, but curious kind of like a climate solution that is exciting to you, and there's like so many different ways you can take what that means, but yeah, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Okay, one thing that I have zero involvement in, but am like passionate about is public transportation. And Mount Desert Island has this bus for the summer months, unfortunately, only the summer months, called the
Huh.
Island Explorer. It is completely free. It is sponsored by LL Bean, and
Yes,
Friends of
beans.
Acadia, I think, contributes to it also. And it solves so many problems at once, and I'm obsessed with it. And
That's
it's
so
known
cool.
for like taking tourists to crowded parking lots so you don't have to park. But they've always been like clean propane, and then they've been testing out electric, and so they're
So
definitely
cool.
doing their best to be a sustainable free giant bus. And it is so lovely because the landscape around here is beautiful. Driving around here is stressful. It's like, especially in the summer, a huge tourist
Yeah,
destination. And um I have friends who think of it as just a tourist thing. Like, yeah, it takes you to Sand Beach. And I'm like, no, I commuted on the Island Explorer like for a whole summer of working College of the Atlantic summer programs. And I
no
was mostly on
way.
time, and it was absolutely lovely. And talk about community and like being aware of just who is on this island with you and getting to meet people of all cultures who come and ride this bus. And they have some statistic about the amount of tons of greenhouse gases that this bus has saved if you add up, like, they tally the amount of people who take it and then add up the
Yeah,
cars
all the
emissions
cars.
that would have if
Yeah,
everyone had driven their own car. It would have been something. I should fact check myself, but I think it was 33 tons of greenhouse gases that this Island Explorer bus has saved.
wow.
And I'm not very good at
Yeah,
conceptualizing numbers, but it's just like
that's a
tracked
lot.
as a solution. And I feel like cities have the public transportation thing dialed, and I have not really lived in cities, and I just feel like for all these rural communities I've lived in, we need something like that year round.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
it's my favorite. It's my favorite for so many reasons. It's my favorite because I can go to Bar Harbor and drink margaritas and not worried about it.
I know. And be fun. Okay, so I have to ask, that was my
Yeah.
what are the hours of this bus? Like,
Yeah,
are they,
no,
is it like early,
I think the
late,
last
or
one
not?
leaves Bar Harbor for Southwest Harbor. I live in Southwest Harbor
Yeah.
now, and so I'm more tuned into that one. I think the last one leaves Bar Harbor for Southwest at like 8:30 p.m. So it's
Okay.
mostly like,
So a few margaritas
you can
of time.
margaritas. You can't
Some
like
margaritas of time.
yes. You cannot stay out all night and ride the Island Explorer home at midnight
Yeah,
or
that's
like
kind of what I was like. I was
3
like,
a.m.
but
I
also then picturing the MDI nightlife culture is probably an 8:30
it's
p.m.
an 8:30
shutdown. It's
deadline.
a
Yeah.
shutdown at that time. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so
totally.
cool. I love
Oh,
that. I love that Bean sponsors it. I'm a huge fan. Like, that's so great that there's that community awareness. I mean, I think like it
yeah.
probably is a little more of like a touristy, like tourist service, but at the same time, like it's cool to start to imagine like what are solutions that look like that, but for community members that are year round, or that are like, maybe it's like more run in the summer and less in the winter, but there's still a couple in the winter, or one that
Yeah.
goes around. Like, it's such a good point, especially for an island where you're like really trying to reduce cars and traffic. And I do know deeply well like how hard those parking lots are to park in when it's high season. You don't want to be anywhere near there with a car. So it's like,
Totally. And it's
yeah.
like, yeah, there aren't great grocery stores except for the Hannaford and Bar Harbor, which is like terrible to get to.
Yeah.
If
Oh, I'm
you're trying
sure.
to stay on island and get groceries. But it is also, I feel like going back to my slow art, like I'll bring art and work on it on the Island Explorer or whatever. And also like it makes me realize how much if I am in a hurry to drive to Bar Harbor and get my groceries in that chaotic parking lot, it is a nightmare. But if I'm like, I'm just gonna spend the afternoon getting
Yeah,
my
like
like
this is my
it's
afternoon.
yeah, you're just sort of like remove the time pressure and
I
you
love it.
can do all kinds of things on the bus. You can draw and cut your
Yeah.
bird, like I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Public
so
transportation is so great for that. I remember like very different, but living in New York City and taking the subway, I was like, wait, I can like read and do anything I want. I don't have to drive.
yes.
This was after like years and years of commuting, which
And
my activities while commuting would be like listening to podcasts or calling friends. But when I could like do things that didn't involve me driving as I
yeah,
commuted was so cool. So cool.
probably I realize I'm like self-conscious that this is my like Mainer awakening to public
No, I
transport. My
love,
mind is
well,
absolutely blown
because
by the fact that I can sit on a bus and not drive because
because
people who live in
growing up
cities
though,
have
we didn't,
we
yeah, but
don't
we didn't have
yeah.
great, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that. I feel like there are going to be friends listening who are like, Addie, you never took the bus in Portland. But like,
It
I
didn't you
always
can
felt
take the
like,
Concord coach to Boston, but like there's
yeah,
not
that's literally the only version of public transport I did was like that bus. I don't think I've ever taken the bus in Portland. It's probably way better now, but no, I 100% like because I didn't really know about this until I moved to cities. So I
yeah.
completely understand. Like, it's definitely, Colorado has like maybe a little bit more, maybe, but I do
Yeah.
think that it's a big deal when you're able to like, yeah, like to I completely, as a Mainer, I completely get what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
everything makes so much sense because we don't really have, Maine's a very driving focused state, I
Yeah.
feel. Yeah.
And
It's like things are pretty far. I don't know.
yes. Yeah, a lot of little dispersed, far away communities,
Yeah.
but it feels like if we could focus on public transportation for rural areas compared to some other climate solutions, it's not a huge financial
No.
lift. I mean, I
And
don't
you
know.
have like public private, like you have LL Bean coming in and helping out
Totally.
with
And I
that, which
have heard as much
Yeah.
as like LL Bean is close to my heart as a Mainer. I mean, my dad worked
Yeah.
there. Like it's, but also I
Oh
have heard
wow.
LL Bean has some questionable politics, unfortunately. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that LL Bean's
Interesting.
like uh the
Perfect.
most ethical corporation, but and so it's like it is a question of like what's greenwashing versus
Yeah,
what's
yeah, yeah, totally.
real.
What's like advertising? Yeah, that's
But
interesting
I'll
too.
shout out that having their name on the side of the Island Explorer bus is like makes them look good too. But
Yeah.
hey, more corporations get your name on the side of public transportation
A
in
rural public transport.
rural
Yeah, we
national
like it.
park communities.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
So great.
Emma, thank you so much for joining and for chatting. It's honestly so fun to like relive parts of like our growing up in the state and like shared experiences at in school and stuff, and really awesome to hear like how cool to hear too about like what a formative experience Maine Coast semester was, because I think that like now after our conversation today I'm like really thinking through like what does it mean to not even activate the next generation, because they're activated, they're ready, like, but it's like what are
Yeah,
giving those formative experiences look like, what does that look like? And yeah, it's just so fun. And your art is incredible. I'm such a fan. Like I it's been so fun to, again, the way that I sort of like found you in the world. I was like, wait, I know who this is, but I like came upon you from your art. So it's sort of this great like colliding worlds colliding. And yeah, I just so appreciate your stories and your time. And I kind of want to like stay in touch on some collaborations or something. Like, let's see. I don't know. Let's see what we can
absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. Let's. Well, thank you so much, Addie, for your kind words about my art and everything. It means a lot. And I love the pod. And this was so much fun.
Thank you.